that documentary came out. Everybody wants to talk about May 22nd in Joplin, Missouri. But I feel like it wasn't, like, the documentary didn't really give it its justice. It didn't really explain how Joplin had to rebuild. It didn't really explain, like, the deficits of what we actually went through during the tornado. It didn't really, in my opinion, even show how bad that tornado got. So, since I was in the tornado, we're gonna go through what my experience was and how my family rebuilt and kind of everything of what my family did. Basically, everybody was right. It did start as like a normal Sunday morning. Nothing out of the ordinary. You know, it was clear blue skies. Kind of like how it is right now in Colorado. Oh, like over here, how there's not even a cloud in sky. That was exactly how it looked the morning of May 22nd. And then out of nowhere, around about 5 o'clock, it just got extremely green outside. Like, it was a very, very dark green. And then right after the dark green, it just turned pitch black. And this is at like 5:30 in the afternoon. So obviously, like, it still should be sunlight. It's during pretty much the summer. So, you know, the sun doesn't go down until like 9 p.m. So luckily for me and my family, we were all at the same place together. We were celebrating my sister's 12th birthday party, so luckily we were all together and we were all in the same house together, so at least we all knew where each other was. In my opinion, that was probably one of the worst things, is if you had like a family member that was just a mile away, you might have not been able to find them. The tornado sirens went off for a total of 5 to 10 seconds, but if you were in a good area, you never heard them and you only heard the tornado first. So there was absolutely no warning whatsoever. Even if the meteorologists knew that a storm was coming, they did not anticipate it to be that magnitude of a storm, and they did not say anything to the people of Joplin, hey, there's a tornado touchdown, you guys need to seek shelter, you guys need to do anything. None of that was prepped. So me and all the other kids that were in my family, both my sisters, my brothers, all of us, and all my sister's friends that came to her birthday party, we all hid under a dining room kitchen table because that was the only place that we could go. We had no basement. We had windows in the bathroom. There was physically no other place for us to go. So worst case is if the house collapsed, it would, at least hopefully, this kitchen table would have held, since it was like an old antique kitchen table. That was kind of like the adults' thought process. But I probably stood outside until it went black with my dad, and then he was like, everybody get inside because you need to like go do something. But at that point in time, we still never heard any type of sirens. We still never got any type of warning from news or anything that the tornado even touched down. At this point, it already was touched down. It was a block away from my grandparents' house. All you hear is like this train right next to your fucking window, shaking the window, shaking everything. Everything is pitch black. You don't really know like what's going on, because obviously at this point none of us were in this type of tornado, so we didn't really know necessarily what was going on. Then after you hear all these winds and everything go by, then it stops for probably about 30 seconds. There was just nothing. And then at that point in time, my dad already knew that we were in a tornado, and he was like, this is the eye, we need to just stay, we need to just calm down, stay calm, because we got another round of bullshit to deal with. So then here comes the second round of trash that we had to deal with, and that was much more stronger winds, harsher damage. And all I can remember is my grandma screaming at the top of her lungs. She was praying, making sure that the house was protected. And then my grandpa, the winds swept away everything off of his porch. So then he's trying to run after his glasses and his plants. My plants is what he's yelling. He just keeps yelling for his plants and his glasses. And so we never found his glasses. So his reading glasses got gone, swept forever. But luckily he was able to save my grandma's favorite tulips and everything. And then after the tornado, after everything, my parents, they took me outside of Joplin to stay with some family members that lived kind of like almost in Carl Junction. So that part of Joplin never really got touched. And then that night my parents went out. They went to go see all the damages. My dad described, we would call it the dead zone. That's where basically the heart of Joplin is, but it's where the biggest scar is for Joplin. Basically, trigger warning, there was bodies everywhere laying on the road. There were bodies in every building that you could think of. And that was kind of whenever we realized that this tornado was much more worse than we thought. Everybody that you knew somebody that passed in the tornado. You knew somebody that was either injured in the tornado, or you knew somebody that lost their house in the tornado. There was no way of getting around that in a town of only 100,000 people. Like, you were going to know somebody that lost their house. You were going to know somebody that needed help. It is a very religious area. You are still part of the Bible Belt in Joplin, Missouri. So you still get those very, very religious people, and you still get every type of religion. So there was a lot of people that would see the butterfly people. And the butterfly people are how I was portrayed as it is. It's basically an angel that came down and protect little kids. Basically, it was only kids under the ages of 10 and under. And it was like this angel that would come down, had wings, looked like a butterfly and everything. And they would come down, would protect the children during the entire storm. Psychologically, there's other scientific definitions behind it. It could have been neurologically, our brains are trying to black out you losing your parent or a loved one and you seeing them get swept away. So our brains for a child were trying to disguise all that, and so you don't necessarily see that type of the trauma. So it could be either way. If you're religious, you could believe in the butterfly people. If you're not religious and you only want to believe in a scientific definition, that is kind of where the scientific definition kind of comes from. Build is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but that was probably one of the worst times. The tornado itself, yes, that was a devastating thing, but having to rebuild after that tornado, we still don't have trees in Joplin. It's been over a decade. Obviously, those types of things, those will not grow back for 100 plus years. We had those trees and everything, but even the buildings, the structures, everything isn't back. It was so bad that it ripped off the asphalt off of the roads, so the roads had to be completely rebuilt. And then that's kind of how it stirred up the fungal and all of those infections. There's diseases and everything that lay in the grounds that we've kind of just put dirt and stuff over. So it doesn't really affect us in today's world, but obviously if all that shit gets stirred up, it's going to cause you to get really, really sick. I knew at least of 10 people that got infected, and most of them did not survive it. I only knew of that one person on the documentary of Steven. He did survive it. He was one of my brother's good friends. So you kind of do get to hear about all the stories already. The graduating class was my brother's graduating class. So you already knew of the people of Will and stuff like that. They are very sad stories. Aren't the saddest stories. There are much more dramatic, sad stories that happened that night. There were whole families that got lost that were never found ever again. There's countless of people that were still missing. There's over 500 people that were still missing that were never, ever, ever accounted for after the tornado. Even with that, you still have corporations. You have corporations that are greedy. Corporations like Lowe's and Dillon's and Academy, they would just donate. They would just donate all their stuff. They knew that they couldn't resell it after the tornado, after their businesses got hit. There was no way of reselling it. So they would donate their tarps, their generators, wood, anything that could help people. And then you have companies like where their policy is to make sure that the safe is safe. So they force people to be in the front of the building, knowing that that part of the building was not the most secured structure. And that's where most of the people got harmed in those buildings, were basically that whole concrete slab would just fall on those people. But then anybody that was in the back of the building with the safe, they were all completely fine. So if you were with the safe, you were fine, but only employees were allowed to be with the safe. So if you were someone like me, just trying to seek shelter, and you were like on range line, just trying to seek shelter, you were not allowed. You were basically told to go to the front of the building, and the outcome of that was not the best outcome. They partnerized with a lot of construction companies to rebuild really, really fast. At this point in time, my father worked for Crossland. He was told to go into and to grab things that they need. So he grabbed all the things that they needed, tarps, generators, and everything. Then the manager told them to catch it all on fire, rip up the tarps, and if they didn't, then they were all going to be prosecuted and charged with theft. So they did as they were told. They ripped up all the tarps and everything. The next day, brought in those same exact equipment to sell, not to donate, not to give out. They had temporary tents already set up to sell those equipments to people in need that need them, but get the bodies out of. Basically, that's how this process started. That was the first 2 nights of rebuilding Joplin. That was kind of how it was managed. That was how, obviously there was some good. There was some people that were over there only to help, that really wanted help. But then there were some people that come in and they would loot. They would take the things that the people in Joplin really needed because they didn't have a home anymore. looting was probably one of the worst things that humanity did in Joplin, just because you had nothing, you had no house. So those things did come about after the tornado. But then after, to fully rebuild, I mean, most kids, you didn't finish that year of school. We didn't finish school for a month after that, because the tornado took out half of the elementary schools, took out 2 of the middle schools, and then for sure the high school. So that kind of led us to not finish school for that year, and then starting the rebuild process of building houses again. And then you had people like Extreme Makeover. They would come over. They did 7 houses in 7 days. Obviously, like, that is something good that came out of the tornado. At least, like, there were people that were donating. There were people that were coming in and helping. There were thousands of first responders that came in from different states, different places. And then we actually got help from other countries like Germany and France. They would send us over supplies and send us over anything that we would need as well, just because of Doug Hetty talking and being one of the most popular meteorologists, because he caught that storm on camera. I moved out of Joplin the second I turned 17. I moved out of Joplin. Anytime people would ask me, hey, where are you from? And if I say Joplin, Missouri, every single person would be like, oh, well, were you in that tornado? I was a block away, so yes, I was technically in it. My grandparents, the houses next to my grandparents were destroyed, but my grandparents never even had a leaf in their house. So tornadoes do act very weird. There is weird patterns with them. You can't really, obviously, if it's still to this day, we haven't fully discovered them. They have very weird, dramatic patterns that we just don't really know anything about. But they are predicting for this year to be worse than 2011. Since I was in May 22nd tornado, I would like everybody to know, for this year, you do need to prep yourself. You need to have your flashlights or candles, whichever one that you prefer. You need to have a cranked radio. We didn't have service in Joplin for well over 3 weeks after the tornado. We didn't have cell service. You couldn't even get cable. You couldn't get anything of that nature. So it is good to have a type of backup radio for you to contact your loved ones if you are away from them during those times, or just something so that you can reach out to them, satellite, to make sure that they know that hey, you're okay, you made it out safe. And that kind of goes for any national disaster. Since there is a spike of all national disasters right now, kind of goes for all of them. You need to know what national disasters in your area so that you can be prepped and that you can be ready, so that you don't ever have to make or be in a documentary about one of the most dramatic days of your life.